Right, let's get straight into it. Welcome to this explainer for Shipology. I'm a senior maritime safety officer, and today we're conducting a critical incident review on what is, quite frankly, one of the most deceptive and deadly hazards you'll ever encounter at sea. Let's dive right in. You know, when we think of maritime disasters, our minds usually go straight to the massive threats, right? Catastrophic collisions, roaring engine room fires, or major hull failures. But there's a silent, vertical predator waiting in literally every corner of your ship, the iron trap. It's the simple, everyday vertical ladder, and it claims lives every single year simply because the margin for error on these iron rungs is absolutely zero. So that begs a really vital question. Why are simple vertical ladders actually one of the deadliest areas on board a modern vessel? Well, today we need to completely shatter the complacency surrounding this everyday piece of gear. We're going to expose the fatal mix of human factors, regulatory realities, and the systemic failures that can turn a routine climb into an absolute tragedy. Here's our agenda for today. 1. The vertical iron trap. 2. Anatomy of a tragedy. 3. Hidden hazards and human factors. 4. Regulatory framework versus reality. 5. System failures and root causes. And finally, 6. The officer's safety checklist. We'll chronologically break down a verified tragedy to understand the root causes and leave you with a life-saving checklist. Section 1. The vertical iron trap, the silent predator. Let's start by taking a hard look at the trap itself, because vertical ladders are your primary access route into the absolute most hazardous spaces on your vessel. Look, on land, taking a fall from a ladder is bad enough. But out at sea, those hazards multiply exponentially. We're talking unforgiving fall heights of 6 to 20 meters, straight down onto unyielding steel tank tops. Add to that confined spaces with potentially toxic atmospheres, poor lighting, extreme weather, and complete isolation from rapid medical rescue. When you compound all of that with sudden vessel motion and rolling seas, the hazard level just goes completely off the charts. Section 2. Anatomy of a Tragedy, Oceanic Angel, August 2007. To really understand how these deadly statistics play out in the real world, we have to reconstruct a specific incident. We're going to trace the final hours of a highly experienced 47-year-old seafarer. This was the setting, the bulk carrier Oceanic Angel. On August 8, 2007, she was sailing just 3 degrees south of the equator, heading to Australia. The outside air temperature? A sweltering 29 degrees Celsius. So you've got intense tropical heat compounded by these occasional passing rain showers. Let's walk through the timeline of that fateful day. At 0800, the crew begins hold cleaning in that brutal heat. By 15:15, 2 seamen, suited up in full protective gear, start spraying a 31% solution of hydrochloric acid in cargo hold number 3 to strip away rust. At 16:30, after a grueling, chemically hazardous shift, they finally stop work. Our able seaman begins his ascent up the forward ladder. Just 10 minutes later, at 16:40, a loud thump is heard on the tank top. As he began his climb at the end of that arduous shift, the physical environment and extreme fatigue had perfectly, tragically set the stage. Take a look at this blueprint straight from the official ASTB investigation. It shows the sheer, terrifying vertical drop of that forward cargo hold ladder. His colleague on the aft ladder heard that loud thump, turned around, and found this experienced seaman lying completely motionless on the steel tank top. He had plummeted 11.7 meters. And despite an immediate emergency response, the fall was fatal. Section 3. Hidden Hazards and Human Factors, the Physical Toll. This incident lays bare the hidden hazards and the immense physical toll of the maritime environment that actually caused this slip. Consider the tragic irony of his PPE here. The seaman was wearing loose-fitting sea boots, nitrile rubber gloves, and a full face mask. Now, these were entirely intended to protect him from the corrosive acid, right? But on that ladder, they morphed into severe physical hazards. In that tropical heat, his hands were likely slipping around inside sweat-filled rubber gloves. Those bulky sea boots gave him totally inadequate traction on the wet rungs, and because he'd taken off his face mask to catch his breath, he was likely carrying it in one hand, meaning he had completely destroyed his ability to maintain a proper grip. So, What we're looking at is a perfect storm, a cascade of immediate causes. You have the loss of critical three-point contact because his hands were full. You've got extreme end-of-shift fatigue. You have ladder rungs made incredibly slick by passing rain showers, and a moderately rolling ship. On top of that, sweat pooling inside rubber gloves is actively destroying his hand grip. Oh, and add the physical distraction of a corrosive acid mist irritating his skin and lungs. Mixed together, this combination of utter exhaustion, weather, and improper grip effectively guaranteed a fall. Section 4. Regulatory Framework versus Reality. The shield's gaps. We really need to contrast these raw physical failures with the strict international regulations that are carefully designed to protect you. Let's check the rulebook. The IMO technical provisions define a vertical ladder as having an angle inclined of 70 to 90 degrees, demanding a minimum 150 millimeter clearance from the bulkhead and mandating resting platforms every 6 meters. Now, this specific geometry is mandatory, but here's the massive gap. These provisions largely apply to permanent means of access for structural inspections. They don't really account for the harsh reality of operational ladders used by a fatigued crew during chaotic daily cargo work. On paper, seafarers are surrounded by this robust, overlapping regulatory shield. You've got SOLAS requiring structural access manuals. You have the ISM code demanding safety management systems and formal risk assessments. STCW requires familiarization training, and the CSS code dictates safe access. But as the Oceanic Angel tragedy proved so clearly, fully compliant steel hardware alone cannot save a crew if there's a fundamental lack of organizational safety discipline on board. Section 5. System Failures and Root Causes. Beyond the slip, this forces us to look beyond the physical slip itself and dig into the system failures and root causes that place that seaman in such a vulnerable position to begin with. I want you to hear this quote directly from the official Australian Transport Safety Bureau report. The ship's safety management system was not effective in ensuring that the crew carried out a formal risk analysis for the hazardous task. The crew were not aware of the safety information provided by material safety data sheets. This bluntly illustrates a critical lesson. It wasn't just a physical slip. It was a complete, top-down failure of the formal risk assessment process under the ISM code. Material Safety Data Sheets, or MSDS, exist specifically to identify hidden hazards. But because the crew was totally unaware of the specific safety info for that 31% hydrochloric acid solution, they completely failed to account for the physically distracting, dizzying, and irritating effects that acid mist would have on a guy attempting a massive vertical climb. When you stack the immediate causes up against the root organizational causes, the full picture emerges. A loss of three-point contact stems directly from the total absence of a task-specific fall risk assessment. Slippery rungs from rain and sweat? That happened because weather and physical strain were completely ignored during job planning. Hands occupied with gear? That occurred because a permit to work was never applied for the climb itself. The root organizational cause here is treating a 12-meter vertical climb in an enclosed space like a casual stroll down the deck, rather than treating the ladder itself as a deadly hazard requiring strict permit-to-work protocols. Section 6. The Officer's Safety Checklist. Preventing Tragedies. To prevent future tragedies like this one, I am speaking directly to the junior and senior deck officers watching this right now regarding your legal and moral duty. Before you ever clear a team for cargo hold or tank work, you must, and I mean absolutely must, execute this mandatory supervisor checklist. Number 1, confirm your risk assessment explicitly addresses the ladder fall risk itself, not just the cargo hazard at the bottom. 2, verify the enclosed space permit to work and casualty rescue plans are actually in place and ready. 3, check the MSDS for physical hazards and ensure proper PPE is selected that won't actually impede climbing. 4, account for the weather, rain, heat, and vessel rolling. And 5, strictly enforce three-point contact and absolutely zero hand-carried items. Use tool belts or hoist lines instead. No exceptions. I really want you to burn this number into your mind. 0. This is your exact margin for error when descending an iron trap in rolling seas. A vertical ladder is not just a walkway. It's a high-risk working environment that demands the exact same level of respect as a high-voltage switchboard. So I'm going to leave you with this final, critical question to chew on. Will you let complacency be the final step of your career? Please, do not let an ignored risk assessment or a rushed permit to work turn a routine climb into a fatal tragedy. Plan the work. Verify the safety documentation. Ensure proper equipment. Protect your crew. Because at the bottom of that ladder, there is absolutely no second chance.